Conference. To get started, David, if you would have prayer for us.
Thank you. Dear Lord, thank you for the opportunity to meet together, and thank you for the opportunity for us to work on the organisation of this group, that it would be betterment for finalising your work on this earth, and would ask that you give us clarity of mind and give us discernment in what we talk about, and that we can further the work of this group. We pray for Jesus' sake. Amen.
Amen. All right. For today's agenda, we will have reports from the active chapters, and then we'll have a report from the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. So do you have someone from the Latin American chapter ready to give the report? I think he is.
Yeah, he's online.
Yeah, he was just getting stuff shared.
Y sonido, ¿no? Y aquí es.
Oh, they speak Spanish, but everything is in English.
Yeah, it's no problem.
We can translate.
No sé cómo lo voy a abrir.
We can hear you, but you're very low. If you can speak louder.
Está compartiendo página.
Ok, deja de compartir. ¿Dónde está?
Es que ellos lo presentaron ya.
Ellos lo presentaron.
Sí, ya lo presentaron ellos.
Ah, pues entonces no tienes nada que buscar. Están presentando ellos, no tú. Ellos están presentando.
Good morning. Y aquí el sonido.
Saca. Bien.
El sonido. Good morning.
Good morning.
ASDAL Latin America Chapter, el reporte anual. Somos 68 miembros.
We are 68 members.
Tenemos un convenio con 14 instituciones adventistas donde hemos compartido 27 artículos.
It's reading on that thing.
Que iniciamos el julio 21 de 2022. Y recientemente en nuestra página de website hemos puesto un lugar que se llama cuarto de oración, en la cual pueden ser agradecimientos o peticiones que todos los miembros pueden hacer, y cuando lo hacen, les llega un mensaje de parte de la asociación donde estaríamos pendientes de su petición o agradecimiento, que estaríamos orando todos los miembros por esa
One
petición.
second, Adam, para que podamos traducir.
Okay.
He's saying that on their website they have, if you can go back one slide, please. They have recently added a place where members can put their prayer requests. And when they put the prayer request and they receive the email that something similar to what's on the screen right now. Okay.
Tuvimos nuestra primera reunión presencial en Colombia en septiembre de 2023,
They had their first in-person meeting in Colombia in September of 2023,
donde asistieron 28 miembros de los siguientes países: Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Chile, Argentina, México, Perú, República Dominicana y Colombia.
where 28 persons from the countries represented and shown on their screen were able to assist.
Les muestro ciertas fotos de los que asistimos y las actividades que realizamos.
He's going to show us a few pictures of those that participated and the activities that they attended.
Son nuevamente los miembros que asistieron. Aquí es donde íbamos a comer.
There is where they went to eat.
Esta es en reuniones.
These are the meetings where the two meetings took place.
La cena que tuvimos, algunos llevaron trajes típicos y estos son algunas personas que se vistieron típicamente.
These at the dinner, they some of them dressed in a typical garb of their country, and these are some of those that dressed in that garb.
Aquí nuevamente en la cena.
Again at the dinner.
En fuimos al paseo. Algunas personas, todos nos acompañaron a un paseo.
They all participated in a trip similar to yesterday's.
Y algunos se animaron a subir hasta este cerro, hasta la última piedra que está hasta arriba.
And a few of them managed to go all the way up this place that he's showing on the screen.
Es un lugar muy bonito, los que lograron llegar hasta allá.
It's a beautiful place, especially those that were able to go there.
Y en el 2025 tendremos nuestra reunión anual en la Universidad Adventista de Chile.
In 2025, they are planning their annual reunion meeting at the Adventist University of Chile.
Hemos acordado cada 2 años nuestra reunión para que la economía no afecte tanto a los miembros.
They have agreed to have their in-person meetings every 2 years so that the economy doesn't affect as so many members or affect as much.
Otras cosas que tenemos hacia el futuro que estamos trabajando es realizar las políticas de normas académicas adventistas para biblioteca. Tenemos para guías, para repositorios institucionales, integridad académica y alfabetización de la información.
For their future outlook or things that you're working on are listed on the screen: Adventist Academic Library Standards, Guidelines for Institutional Repositories, Academic Integrity, Information Literacy.
Fuente de conocimiento puede ser, proclamando los valores que te impulsan a crecer. No importa en qué rama tú desees aprender, un bibliotecario te ayudará a encontrar la mejor información.
Un bibliotecario soy que busca ser el bien, con información que a todos pueda hacer crecer. Quiero compartir la luz al mundo y trascender, que la Biblia sea el libro que nos guíe al bien.
Dios me ayudará a comprender su gran amor. Por la eternidad yo podré aprender del Maestro Supremo Rey y Dios.
Un bibliotecario soy que busca hacer el bien, con información que a todos pueda hacer crecer. Quiero compartir la luz al mundo y trascender, que la Biblia sea el libro que nos guía y guíe. Quiero compartir la luz al mundo y trascender, que la Biblia sea el libro que nos guía y guíe.
Este himno lo estrenamos el año pasado en Colombia y es nuestro himno que lo tendremos en nuestras reuniones de ASDAL Latinoamérica capítulo.
This anthem that they just showed us is what they are adopting for the Latin American ASDAL chapter. And it was first shown last year at the in-person meeting.
Y este es nuestro contacto y les agradezco mucho su atención.
Thank you. And the previous screen was the contact information.
Thank you for that report. Is there a motion to accept?
Heather Rodriguez James, Oakwood. So, all right, so move.
Michael Campbell, second.
All right. Any comments? We move on?
I mean, Ashley Chisholm, maybe instead of just an overall ASDAL song, maybe each chapter needs its own song. Yeah.
It's language.
Yeah. Yes, as excellent song for the Latin American chapter. Thank you. All right, our next report will be from the African chapter.
Yes, can I do it from here?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay.
No,
okay.
because we can't see you. People want to be able to see you.
Yes, good morning once again. After that beautiful presentation from a Latin American chapter, I feel so dwarfed to present this report. We've not done much really, but at least we've done something. And our current president, by the name Dr. Evan Sotuza, sent this report. He's the university librarian at Clifford University in Nigeria. So ASDAL African chapter is one of the chapters of the ASDAL International. The chapter is governed by an executive committee and operates under ASDAL constitution and bylaws. Currently, there are 68 members drawn from 11 African countries, as shown in this slide. That is, we have one Botswana, we have Democratic Republic of Congo, we have members from Ghana, we have members from Kenya, then Lesotho, Liberia, Malawi, Nigeria, Rwanda, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. We need many more, of course, but you heard from what my sister Rosemary said, Dr. Maturure, it is so hard to bring people together, but we are still encouraging more membership from more countries. So in terms of governance, we have ASDAL African Executive Committee members, and then we have the chair, who is Dr. Evan Sotuza, I sit there as an immediate past chair just to advise for consultation. We have the vice chair, Miss Elizabeth Odhiambo. Then we have our secretary, Robert Chalo Chihuahua. Then we have our vice secretary, Robert Niyomungure. Then treasurer, Dr. Fagbe Abimbola. And then public relations officer, Mr. Francis Smith. Then we okay, people have not started paying because we are still struggling on the modalities of payment because of where we come from various regions. So, but what we are supposed to charge is one of application fee of $10, and then annual membership of $25. And then we also decided and agreed that we see whether institutions can pay, that is $100 annually if they agree to do so. Our ongoing projects and achievement are as follows. We have a grant from the General Conference to support institutional libraries across the 3 divisions. That is from ECD, SID, and WAD in Africa. This has not been released as yet because there are documents that we are preparing. This is what I talked about when we were here at the front. So this is a great achievement, and we look forward to making it a reality in terms of implementing this wonderful project. It's a 3-year project. If we do it well and the money is released, it's a 3-year project that will enable institutions, Seventh-day Adventist institutions in Africa, to have access to e-resources. Yeah, so, and then of course we are looking at how we will continue from there in terms of sustainability. And then we we are in the process also of opening an account so people are able to register and pay money. Then now, one of the things that this grant will do also is capacity building for librarians. So this will also happen. So we are planning to have capacity building events, and this involves, preparing seminars and workshops, and maybe a conference once a year. So we are still planning for this. And then, of course, we are proud that we were able to hold the 43rd ASDAL International Conference at AUA in Kenya. We count this as a blessing, and people learned a lot, and it's a milestone. It was a milestone for us because I think, if I remember well, that was the second time this meeting was taking place in Africa. The first one was in 1980. Was it 87 at in South Africa? I don't know. Maybe she can remember. Has ASDAL ever taken place in Africa? 2000. Maybe I don't know, but at least that was the second. Yeah, so we were happy that it came to Africa once again, and we hope that it will happen again. And then, of course, we are also happy for the composition of the ASDAL anthem. I hope that we will adopt it. If not at international level, maybe at the chapter level. Yeah, ASDAL African chapter, of course, has not gone without the challenges. We have a difficulty in increasing the number of individual SDA librarians and information professionals from within the 54 African countries. We have 54 African countries, but we only have, a membership from 11 countries. So we are really struggling for people to join ASDAL African chapter. So there is a poor participation of the SDA institutions in the chapter activities, but we are hoping that we will be able to get more participation. And there are challenges also associated with payments of dues by members due to the US dollar exchange rate, which runs up and up and up and down, up and down. but these are things that will be fixed as time goes by. Way forward, of course, we look at completing the projects that we are starting, especially when the funds are released, and then we just want to believe that we will have training. We will be able to run workshops, and we will be able to run at least one conference in a year, and then we look at strengthening operational structures so that we are able to tackle the identified challenges through networking, through a dynamic membership drive, and of course, the initiating of capacity building programs and partnerships. Yeah, in conclusion, as a chapter, we are grateful to God for he has led each one of us, and we are really thankful to ASDAL International, the World Church, and the World Church for their support. ASDAL African chapter is growing, and we need more encouragement and support for greater accomplishment. And that is the end of the report. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nora. Any comments or questions? If not, I'll accept a motion.
Ashley Chisholm, I motion we accept the report.
Is there a second?
Heather Rodriguez James, I second.
All right, moved and seconded. Our final report is from the European chapter, and that I believe it will be Raul.
Are you able to see the page?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Complete one? Okay. Thank you. So this is the fourth ASDAL Europe conference. The last one took place maybe more than 15 years ago. And we decided as a way to celebrate, because we are celebrating our 125th anniversary as an institution in Friedensau, Germany, we wanted to resume the conferences. So thanks to the efforts of our volunteers, which they organized the conference, it became a possibility, and we are happy to announce and to share how it went. This is the flyer of our conference. On the left side is the building, the facade of the library. And the main topic was strengthening Adventist libraries in Europe. It includes both divisions, the intra-European division and the inter-European division. The logo can be seen here with more detail. There are like 5 hands representing the 5 continents, depending how you count them. And it is the 4th conference. These are some details of the reception. As you can see, it was a small conference, but very meaningful to us. Our objectives were the following. We had a main objective. We wanted it to be 7-day, not only because we are 7-day Adventist, but we wanted to include the Sabbath in our conference experience. And one of the points was to develop leadership, because no one is taking the initiative. We have to begin with something, and also to set the rhythm of our future gatherings. That was also an objective. And of course, the location of future conferences. From the very beginning, we wanted it to be a very casual conference, not one that is filled with reports and presentations. We didn't want them to be exhausted at the end of the year with so much input. We decided to make it very casual and to emphasize the personal contact. We wanted to know each other better, to spend time together, and based on that, binding to be able to make a commitment for the future. These are our participants from 7 institutions. As you can see, Serbia, Germany, France, Poland, UK, and Germany also. One of them is a representative of the public librarians, because we didn't want it to be only academic, but also represent the youth and the academies. The academy in Germany has a very developed library. Actually, they call it Media Center. And we want her to be part of it. And we're glad that it happened 7 days with 7 institutions. It's somehow meaningful. So this is the program. On the first day, on Monday, we had the welcoming. The following day, the inauguration. We had a campus and archives tour on that day. On Wednesday, the following day, we had part in the institutional devotional. And then we went to Potsdam, to the library of the university there, where we visited the theological library and also visited the adjacent Park Sanssouci. On Thursday, we worked together. We stayed at home. We did an extensive library tour. And on Friday, we went to Halle to visit the digitizing department of the state and university library there. Before Sabbath, we started a bonfire, where we ate bread and wine, very casual. It was not Holy Supper. It was just bread and wine, grape juice, that is, non-alcoholic. And on Sabbath, at the University Church, there was a Holy Supper celebration. Then we wanted our participants to experience potluck as a community. And then we went to the forest to give a walk, because we are surrounded by extensive forests. So there is plenty of room to explore and relax the mind. Then in the afternoon, there was a baptism ceremony, and they took part in it, and that's exactly what we wanted, that they experience the spiritual life of our institution. Then on Sunday, we went to Berlin, where we visited the I would say the monumental state library in Berlin, and other cultural monuments. For example, the burning of books monument, and also the monument to the Holocaust. Then at the end, we went to a restaurant where we had kosher and vegan food. Then on Monday, we said farewell, and that was the conference. Very lively, very intense, I would say, but at the same time, with a lot of possibilities to interact at the personal level. And I think those relationships that developed were very meaningful. They are the foundational platform to begin building upon it. These are some impressions of our visits outside our campus. On the left is the park, the university in Potsdam, and The last picture to the right is the Parc Sanssouci. The picture in the middle, in the upper side, is the digitizing department of the State Library in Halle, and the picture to the right at the top is the State Library in Berlin, along with the one to the left. These are the monuments against intolerance. In 1993, some Nazi people decided to burn countless books, and this plaza was dedicated to that. As you can see inside the floor, you can see an invisible or empty library. All the books that were burned are no longer there, and that's the remembrance. And to the right is the, of course, well-renowned monument to the Holocaust, another example of intolerance. In a time when anti-Semitism is on the rise, it was important for us to stress that point. Some of the topics discussed were contemporary challenges in Adventist libraries and European perspective, promoting collaboration among libraries, opportunities and tools, engaging the youth, strategies for adapting our academic libraries to resonate with younger generations in this digital age. We had practical workshops on library tools and best practices. We talked about sustainability initiatives, making our libraries more eco-friendly, the Adventist Library in the digital context, digital archiving, ebooks, repositories, and remote access, distance learning supports, enhancing the role librarians play in online education landscapes. We share our experiences during Corona. And also we talked about reflecting Jesus in our libraries and his examples of collaboration in his life. This was just an example of our interaction. And these are some rituals that we practiced during the conference, and the word ritual might sound very strange in an Adventist context, but we noticed that our professors are nowadays researching more into it and its effect it has on people. So as we said, the conference took place during Pentecost, which according to the Jewish counting, took place on the 11th and 12th of June. It is different from the Roman Catholic Church's counting. But this is the point. Of course, the 49 days and the 50th day being the Pentecost. So we had 7 institutions. On the left side, we wrote every single institution participating. And the meaning of it is that we cannot do it alone, that we must bind, that we must cooperate. And so that was the purpose of the conference, that we must work together. As we went to our walk to the forest, we collected stones which represented the challenges we have as libraries. And to the right, every member got a bag that they were supposed to decorate with their impressions of the conference. And in the lower part, there is a dice with 6 areas of work, of collaboration that we intend to embark upon in the future. Everything was put in the bag, and it was taken on their backs so that they don't forget that the burdens that we are going to share. That was part of the commitment, that we are not going to work alone, that we want to work together, and that we want to share our burdens. And that was the meaning of these rituals taking place in Pentecost. We decided that we want to gather more than once a year. Of course, once a year in person and 3 additional times during the year online. And it doesn't have to be a whole day event. It might be maybe just an hour. We want to make sure that the contact doesn't get weakened, but that we strengthen the bonding that took place. The place for the future conferences would be Romania, Serbia, and Bulgaria in that order. We want to give emphasis to East Germany because the last 3 conferences have taken place in West Germany, and we want to balance it. So these are the 6 commitments that we want to work together: Adventist identity, artificial intelligence, digitization, acquisition of ebook packages as a consortium, staff development, and good literature. These are the members of the new leadership, as you can see from the left to the right: the treasurer, Nevena from Newbold, and vice chair, Petra Dürsch from Germany, and myself from Friedensau, and from Cologne, France, Jessica. This is our participants. Some of them, one is missing, but and to the right is the person, our volunteer who organized the entire conference. I did minimum effort, but the entire heavy emphasis was on her shoulders, and she deserves the credit. She's our volunteer at the moment. And this is the certificate that each participant obtained. This concludes my presentation. I hope you have some questions for me. I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
What languages do you use to communicate?
Only English. We cannot do it in any other language. There was no translation. Actually, one person was translating on the side, but we really wanted it to be only English.
I just want to say, Heather Rodriguez, I just want to say congratulations on that conference. It looks very well put together. And I saw that you all had a number of great topics, and I was just wondering if they would be available for all of us to read at one point or another or see.
Yes, yes, of course. I think the cooperation doesn't have to stop at the chapter level, but maybe we can have some intra platform so that we can cooperate, because I think that's meaningful that we don't work as islands, but that we have some bridges among us.
Thank you.
Right, this is exorcism. If you haven't given an update on this conference yet to ASDAL Action, a report on it, or some of the presentations that people gave would be excellent articles for the ASDAL Action.
Yeah, I'm preparing it. Yeah, I will do.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right, is there a motion to accept the report?
Heather, so move.
Second?
Michelle Rojas seconded.
All right, thank you. It's moved and seconded. All right, final item on our agenda for this year's business meeting is proposal presented from the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. And Ashley Chisholm will be presenting the proposal on behalf of the committee.
Okay, I just forget how tall Neil is.
Do you need the USB-C?
Something, I'm not sure which. I've never connected this to this,
Yeah.
so help me out, please.
Sure.
Okay. Excellent. I will make this larger. Okay, so our chair, Jessica Spears, asked me to present this report on behalf of the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. First, Constitution and bylaws was tasked last year from the conference with implementing, or at least propose, I'm going to read it. The motion from last year was to have the Constitution and Bylaws Committee review the process of restructuring the organization of ASDAL, making the process available for comment, discussion, and revision ahead of a vote held during the next annual meeting business session. Moved and seconded. And a brief summary of what these changes were was having the current structure of ASDAL become ASDAL International, which is kind of how we've already been treating it in general over the last several years. We're just kind of updating the bylaws to reflect what reality has been. Then encouraging changes that would help allow for creation of a North American chapter so that it's not North Americans are international and everybody else is a chapter. And then how to deal with someone without an active chapter, but still wanting to be a part of ASDAL, how to deal with that, how questions about dues and how dues are determined by chapters, but also ASDAL gets a portion of dues. That was another thing we had to discuss. And then about conferences and about how those would happen. And so this, we met several times. I don't remember how many, it was like 4 or 5. We spent our time working through these bylaws, which we did circulate before this. Hopefully you have all read it. I'm asked to hit the highlights of the main things here. So our main desire in implementing these proposed changes are that we wanted to create a flexible framework that doesn't lock us into certain actions, as in the past where there was like specific amounts required for dues, which just doesn't work anymore. And also fits the ASDAL of now while also allowing us a basis from which to build for the future. Kind of all the kind of ideas we've been talking about today. So the main things that we have, the highlights would be first here in the dues section was in Article 2 is that instead of just saying, here are the numbers of how much the dues cost for retired persons and students, we have stated, that every ASDAL chapter shall be responsible for collecting dues from their members at an amount established in their chapter's bylaws. So that we're also, ASDAL International would not be mandating how much your chapter would be collecting because ASDAL International doesn't have the ability to necessarily track all your economic situations and what your members have in terms of economic funds. And then it says a portion of these dues shall be remitted to ASDAL International with the amount negotiated between each chapter and the ASDAL International Executive Committee. So that means, so we're also not necessarily mandating that everybody's going to do like half or 25% or what. It's going to be between the chapter and ASDAL International is going to figure out what works best because we want it to be robust and able to grow. And if we're saying, well, you must send a certain amount of this and it's locked into the bylaws, that doesn't give us the room to be flexible. And then we say that regular members who do not have access to a local ASDAL chapter may pay annual dues to join ASDAL International as determined by the ASDAL International Executive Committee, and that retired persons and students can pay dues at a discounted rate. So we still want, chapters can still say retired members and students can pay at a discounted rate, but you would still determine those. Now, the next is, so I'm just going down through the articles. Based off of the restructure that is in Article 4, the proposed restructure, Article 3 here would be affected. Instead of having an annual conference every year hosted by ASDAL International, which is what we have had for the last 44 years, excepting the year for COVID, is that here instead it would be ASDAL International will host one conference every 3 to 5 years at a site selected by the executive committee. Other meetings will be called as needed by the executive committee of ASDAL International. Each chapter will regularly host one chapter-specific conference within its geographic region. So that the thinking there is that to deal with the fact that costs have been growing, budgets have been being cut, people are increasingly needing to use their personal funds to come to conferences, just in general, inside and outside of the church. We want to be able to help that out. And in that way, if we are meeting 3 to 5 years, we can plan, have a little bit longer to plan for what that conference is, but also we want to support people in between those times. So in that case, the chapters, much like the presentation that we just heard from the European chapter, which great report, is that they can hold a chapter specific conference. And then that can support and those bonds, but then every 3 to 5 years, the chapters are coming together for the international conference, wherever that site is around the world. And then that's for, and there's some other things here that are like the knock-on effects from, a lot of these are changes to international conference or international executive. That's what a good number, we fine-tooth combed these as we went through. Now, here is the other large portion, the restructure of the executive committee. First, in section 1, instead of, it would add, and instead of just reading it out, because hopefully you've read it, it would add the chapter presidents to ASDAL International's executive committee. So not only would they, so they would be a part of the body making the decisions about where things would be, and it would increase communication between the chapters and between the chapters and ASDAL International. And then it tells who would be ex officio, which is the same. The past president is ex officio of that. And then we mandate that they must meet at least once yearly. From my experience, it's always more than that, but at least once a year. From that, we've also added a fact that you cannot be ASDAL International president and a chapter president at the same time. We discussed this. It's not that somebody's not capable of doing that, but the work that goes into both, that's just too much work for one person to be doing. And it would also interfere with being able to communicate and all those kind of things. That meant that we then had to adjust the length of people's terms here for ASDAL International. And the suggestion, and there was multiple iterations here, was that the ASDAL International Association president shall serve from the end of one ASDAL International conference until the conclusion of the next ASDAL International conference. So at the end of the conference, so like tonight, when we finish at the banquet, the next term would start. And then after the next conference, whether it's the 3 years or the 5 years, that would be the length of their term. And in there, it says that, the basic functions of the ASDAL president don't really change. It's just a longer term. And then the next big change is that instead of a president-elect, we have renamed and redrafted the job of what a president-elect would have been, and have created the ASDAL International Vice President. So one member of the ASDAL International Executive Committee will be selected as the vice president during the first executive meeting. This individual shall serve from the end of one ASDAL International conference until the conclusion of the ASDAL the next one. So the same kind of linked term. They act on the behalf of the president in their absence and will plan the program for the international conference. So same job that the president-elect has of planning the conference, but they are also doing the work of what a vice president would do and assisting, the president in that. So the president is still doing the job of running ASDAL as they already have, and then the vice president is the one planning the conference. Yeah, and that is actually the biggest things that are in here, all these other ones that I'm scrolling through right here are knock-on effects from the changes that have been made. For example, here in the treasurer added a line about the ASDAL International Treasurer shall coordinate with the executive committees of each chapter as necessary to make sure things are flowing smoothly. We know we have different monetary units, all those kind of things that are necessary to deal with when you have chapters dealing internationally. We adjusted the ASDAL action editor's terms, like a job description for just to clarify things. We moved chapter organization and leadership up underneath here. It was farther down in the bylaws, but the way everything was structured, it made way more sense to bring it up here. And the text of it has remained the same. It's just in a new location. That's why it's all nice and yellow. And then clarified some things about elections in terms of who votes in what. Does the president get to vote, or do they just vote for ties? What happens when there's a vacancy? And then now we have the list of coordinators here. And these did not have much because they had been recently looked at by bylaws. And let's see. There was large sections of text governing each of the sections, and instead we have condensed that to the section shall be governed by a working committee and may form subcommittees as needed, because again, that can allow for creations of new sections and new subcommittees without having them mandated. We want to just be in the situation that the bylaws are being obeyed instead of being out of step with them because of outdated language. Same with the standing committees. There is one committee that we have recommended, and it's all the way down here. Well, first we have added information about the statistics committee to update kind of the things that we have been talking about today in actuality, is it to gather and analyze information and librarianship within the Seventh Adventist Church. The committee will collect information at the request of the executive committee, and it talks about who is involved in the statistics committee. And from what I've been hearing today, the work of this committee might actually be very, very important, and there's lots of things that they could be doing. Just a thought. There's also one committee that we are recommending we completely remove, this academic rank and tenure committee. The Constitution and Bylaws Committee believe from the discussions we have is that it is actually better suited. Not that it's not important, but the way that it's currently written, it is important that it is something that it's a committee that could be handled at the North American chapter level rather than at a higher level. But who knows? Like, people can make adjustments in future bylaws committees recommendations. And then we have, if you've been looking at the things with the chapters themselves here, that we have updated the language to state, instead of mandating it just being geographical areas, that they can be formed to meet the needs of a specific cohort as well as a region, because we know for a fact that, for example, Latin America is primarily in Spanish, but we know that there are English speakers in Latin America as well, or other language or native languages, and we want to make sure that if there's a need not being met, we can have a chapter that meets that need without having it be out of step with the bylaws. And additionally, we have just stated that the list of active chapters will be made available on the ASDAL website rather than listing in the bylaws the specific geographical areas that are being covered by currently inactive chapters. If we're locking that into it, that doesn't allow for the creativity and the flexibility of creating those chapters. And then that was it. So those are the main ones. The main recommendations that are then coming from Constitution and bylaws is that we recommend that these proposed changes be accepted. And also then if they are accepted, that people choose to create a North American chapter. So that would be the report from the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. I don't know what to do next.
At the beginning, the section on chapters
Hmm.
specifies that there should be one, that they should hold one conference. But it does not give a period within they should hold that conference. It seems to me that there should be some kind of specification there. They could hold a conference next year and then never again.
Mm.
If you bring it up, but
Yeah, I'm scrolling.
it's pulling it, but I believe the language is just to hold regular conferences. Says we're not. Does it say one?
Oh, well, regularly host one chapter specific conference within. So I think it's the regularly.
So right, yeah, there's something that it's like it just needs to happen at a.
Maybe it should say annually or semi-annually. I think Margaret's point resonates with me.
It's fair.
Yeah. Well, the reason it doesn't say something like annually or semi-annually is that we want to leave it up to the chapters to decide how often is often enough for a conference. It might be something where they only able to hold it like if we hold it every 5 years with international, they might hold it every 3 years.
Maybe it should just be then just reworded to say each chapter will establish a regular.
Chapter specific conference.
Yeah,
Rather than
conference.
saying one.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would take care of it.
Okay. I don't have a pen. How do
Uh,
we deal with that? Just so we can mark that down.
Yeah, and I mean we have the which.
Okay. Christy?
I was just thinking, sort of on a similar note, I understand the flexibility of 3 to 5 years, but if you're asking somebody to run as president from one conference to another, it might be good to have an established international framework, because otherwise you're asking someone to run for president for 3 years or maybe 5 years. That's unclear, and that might change whether or not people are willing, like, you know what I'm saying. So I like the
Totally.
flexibility of it and the ability to adjust from the money and location and some of those factors, but I think when you're tying the terms of the president to the conference, it should be an established term.
Okay, well then I guess my follow-up question for the membership here and then online would be which one would be preferred, the 3 or the 5? Because there was debate about that in the Constitution and bylaws, which is why we settled on the framework there.
Would it be a good idea or not a good idea to piggyback with other events that occur on a regular basis, like say general conference, where people that may be coming from other countries or wherever, any big travel, it could all happen at one time. You know, make it might easier to get permission. We're going to represent a general conference and attend the ASDAL conference.
I mean, that is a possibility. I think that with the site planning committee's work being attached to it, that might limit based off of like where the session is being held.
But we already have, if we have a North American chapter, then that would be, you know, different sites, but maybe even just have it at the closest site to wherever general conference is being held.
Yeah,
Just
that's
for
a
the
possibility.
international,
Yeah,
just for the international, yeah.
possibly. Yes.
And I'm sorry, can I do that?
Yes.
And I find the rhythm every 3 years, every 2 years more natural. Every 5 years is too long a wait, and every 3 years is like not very natural. But it's just my perspective.
Yeah, I would support that. 5 years is a long time.
Okay. I know that the Association of Seventh-day Adventist Historians does every 3 years. So that is something to consider as well.
Yes. That sounds more reasonable.
But then if we, sorry, if. Does it work?
Should
I was just saying, but if we would reframe our thinking, because if we have a North American chapter, we can do them as often as we want. But it's just that international component where big business happens and it's not as much of a, you know, a close type thing. I mean, it can be a close type thing, but you know, it seems like a general conference. It's like a big decision-making time. And I don't know. Yeah.
Right. I don't know what I don't have an answer. It's a good thought.
It may be that the word regularly would take care of it in that. But it just seems to me that there should be some kind of parameter for the scheduling of the meetings.
Right. That makes sense.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of membership
Zoom,
for ASDAL International, does that mean if we have members interested in joining ASDAL International, they will no longer do that now?
So the way that it's set up is that like all chapter members are members of ASDAL International as a whole. Whereas if somebody does not have a chapter to join, they can just join attached to ASDAL International. That's not the ideal situation. The ideal situation is that they would be a part of a chapter. It's just the situation. In fact, if there was no chapter for whatever reason, that they could, while there's a chapter being created or whatnot, that they could still. I think part of it also, if we're transitioning out, until there is an establishment of a North American chapter, we're not going to say all the people who are in North America no longer are part of ASDAL until they create a chapter. I think that's also part of that transition as well, because right now we're just members of ASDAL International if these are voted. And so there's that as well.
And then in terms of in terms of conferences, so it means that if, for example, I'm interested in attending, or any other person is interested in attending an international conference, it will be after 3 years or 5 years.
Currently, as how it's set here, it would be one or the other. But as from what the discussions we've been having here, it seems people are leaning towards one or the other.
Yeah.
So, Elizabeth.
There are several comments online. The first comment is from Katie as she had to leave. She mentions that on page, and she mentions, thank you to the committee for doing this work. And on page 2, the 3 to 5 year ASDAL international conferences are to be held at locations selected by the executives. However, later in the document, the site planning committee section still reads that, I imagine the SPC site planning committee recommends locations and the ASDAL membership votes to select. One or the other should be modified. On page 10, school library coordinator section still refers to an annual conference.
Well, we missed that too.
And in part of the conversation that we just had about 3 to 5 years, that range, Adore mentions to split the difference and do an international conference every 4 years, and chapters can meet anytime in between. And Don Martin agrees with Adore and says every 3 years to having an international conference is too soon, while having a chapter conference every year is a good timeline.
Christy?
Yeah, I was actually I'm sitting here thinking 4 years. I feel like 4 years is nice too, because if a chapter doesn't necessarily want to meet annually, it gives them a nice biannual, and they could, have the biannual, and then they could have the international where they have sort of a subsection of their chapter meeting, so it would allow you to better, I don't know, facilitate if your chapter does not have for whatever reason, the interest in doing an annual conference. I feel like that even number might be easier
To work with.
And so I was kind of leaning towards 4 as well, because 3 feels a little bit too tight and 5 feels too long.
Yep, that's fair. That's what I'm hearing right now, so. Any others online or here?
Sheila just added that she would be happy with 4 years.
Okay. All right, well. I'm not seeing anybody else at the moment, and yeah, we've marked this down. I'm not sure the next
Yeah.
steps.
Well, so procedurally, we have a couple options, and it depends on how someone wants to move. And we could move multiple things and see which got voted.
Mhm.
The main options are to either move to send it back to the bylaws committee for the revisions discussed, and then it would need to come back to the body as a member of the executive. I'd say if that were to happen, would likely hold a business session in between conferences, so we would not have to wait
next
another
year.
year to make the changes. The alternative thing would be that someone could do would be to move to accept the change, to accept the proposed bylaws with the changes we've discussed, which we'd have to go back and list the changes.
And then submit them out.
Yeah, so, and they would be included in the motion that went out for a vote. So at this point, it's out to you guys. If someone would like to make a motion, either of those proposals, or if you've thought of another option. And however anyone would like to proceed.
Elizabeth Henry, I move to send this document to vote pending with the changes, with the discussion that we have discussed.
Yeah. Is there a second to that motion?
I second it. Don Martin, Southern Adventist University.
Okay, so to summarize, we have a motion to accept the proposed bylaws with changes of changing to, each chapter will establish a schedule of meetings. That the ASDAL international meetings will be every 4 years.
Adore has her hand up.
Okay, yeah, sorry, Adore.
I was just going to say that we do have an option to post these on our website with a forum available so people can add discussion items. So I'm not trying to change the motion, but I'm just saying if we want to send it back to bylaws to make these changes, we could also add that they're available for discussion, and Constitution and bylaws can review that discussion in making any changes. I'm not quite sure how to word that.
Yeah, do that.
That would be a new motion.
Yeah. That would,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
I'll finish summarizing that, and we can actually take a second motion. Like I said, we can have both motions and see which people want to vote for. But then it would be set the timing of change the timing of the ASDAL international conferences to 4 years, and then correct the site planning and school coordinator sections. Site planning to correctly reflect that
Other changes.
the other changes, and school coordinator to correctly reflect the changes in the timing of the conference. So that is a motion that has been made and seconded. And then Adore, you had a motion you wanted to make?
Okay.
Excuse me,
Yes.
there cannot be two motions on the floor. We would have to vote this motion down and then consider Adore's.
So how do you do that since we don't vote till after? It's a good question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will just share this information now, and Elizabeth, it was you that put the motion forward, correct?
Yes, it was her.
Correct.
Okay, so I think if we would want to go this direction, Elizabeth could withdraw the motion
and we could do the second one, but yes, both of them cannot stand at the same time. But I just wanted to say that we could have a motion to make these available online with the forum available for members to make comments, and have the Constitution and bylaws review it again with that conversation available.
Yes, that is true.
There's a comment online, and then Jason has his hand up. The comment is from Don Martin, and it says, can we accept the first motion and all the changes made and then do what Azuri suggested and have a future business meeting to discuss any future changes? And I don't know if we need to answer that right now, but then Jason has his hand up.
So procedurally speaking, you'd have a motion and then a second, and then there's discussion. What Adare is suggesting of having online discussion is basically the natural way that we would be able to do that before having the vote, which we're having online as well. So I don't know that what Adare is saying needs to have a separate motion. It's just a forum for the discussion that would naturally happen. And could, would continue from what we're doing here.
That makes sense. So during the voting period, we'd have that open for people to comment, and people could then decide whether they vote on the motion or not. I mean,
Yes, thank you, Jason. That's definitely the direction I was
Yeah.
going, and I couldn't quite figure out how to say that.
A note for people as they look at that, if there were things that came up in the discussion that we would want to be reflected in the bylaws, we would have two options. It's important. Either we vote this motion down at that point and then later have a business session to make another motion, or as Don Martin was suggesting, people could still vote for this motion and then make note of the things to go back to bylaws, the bylaws committee for a future additional revision to the bylaws. But I just want to note that to make it understood that any discussion here, because the motion is already made, wouldn't be able to be incorporated into the motion as we've done with the changes that we discussed here. All right.
Our food's been here.
Yeah, is there any additional discussion? Otherwise, we can adjourn the meeting. Yes.
I think this is discussion. So if this is all voted through, what's the timeline to when things actually change?
The change would be effective with the announcement of the results of the vote.
So then as soon as this happens, the current ASDAL Executive Committee would become the international.
Right.
Right.
And
And
so
there
the
would be no North American chapter. And so then that's a future thing that would need to happen.
Yes.
And the president-elect would become the vice president.
Yes. And at that point,
And the president-elect
would become the vice president. All right. Well, I don't see anything else online, but here seems ready to. So with that, we will adjourn the business meeting, pending posting the motions for voting and the results. We are adjourned. Prayer for the
Yes. All right. Our food has been here. So we are going to have prayer for our food, and it is out in the regular spot, and then we will reconvene at 1:30 for at 1:30, and the for the roundtables and our online folks. You are welcome to attend. We have a way for you to join the roundtables that you want to attend. So don't think, oh, they're roundtabling, I can't be involved. You can be involved. So we reconvene at 1:30. All right, we will have prayer for lunch. Dear Father, thank you for the reports we have heard this morning, as well as the discussion we've had on the proposed changes to the bylaws. We all want to be about your business seriously, and I know everyone takes it seriously. Please bless the food and nourish and strengthen us. In your name, amen.